I guess going back to your story here, when you were at Rudy Records, that was when you got the offer to work with Prince. So how did that come together for you?
Prince was coming off of his 1999 tour. He had gotten the green light from Warner Brothers to do a semi-autobiographical movie of his life, which is just crazy because
Mhm.
the guy was just turning 25 years old. Yet Warner Brothers believed in him and they said yes. So he was planning Purple Rain, the movie and the album, and of course the big tour that was going to follow that. And he was a star after 1999, but not yet a superstar. So he knew
Mhm.
his home base in Minneapolis needed an infusion of the pro audio industry, at least technically, to help him be able to hang and prepare all this material for the movie and for the album. So he asked his management company, find me a technician and make sure it's somebody from New York or LA, a permanent technician to move out to Minnesota. The first thing his LA based management did was contact Westlake Audio, who sold and serviced audio equipment in LA. And they asked Glenn Phoenix, the president of Westlake, do you have a technician? Do you got anybody who's willing to go to Minnesota and be this guy's tech? So Glenn went back into the tech shop and asked the guys, does anybody know anybody? And right away, my ex-boyfriend, John Sacchetti, who was a tech at Westlake, right away said, Sue, she wants that job. That's for Sue. Sue's perfect for that job. John had a thick Boston accent. He called me Sue, which most people do not do. John called me right away and just said, Sue, your dream job is waiting for you. Prince is looking for a technician. Call Glenn. Tell him you want that job. When I got that phone call, it changed my life. And I told John, tell Glenn to call off the search. That is my job. I'm getting that job. And right away, I contacted Glenn and I said, I want that gig. They interviewed me. His management interviewed me. We agreed on terms. And I just assumed that all these technicians were going to want that job. But really, they didn't. The technicians who worked in LA were in the catbird seat. They were
Right.
working in the entertainment capital of the world. There's no way they're going to leave and go work for this guy. But I was a huge Prince fan. I'd seen him on tour, the times he'd come through LA, had all his records. I was female. He liked working with women. I was a technician who knew my stuff. So it was kind of the perfect alignment of the stars. He needed someone just like me. I was a rare bird, just like him. And we found each other. So off I went.
And I have to imagine that moving from California to Minnesota would have been a bit of a culture shock for
It
you.
was different, but boy, I loved it instantly. Oh, I loved it, loved it, loved it. I loved the prairie. I loved the people. I loved just the pace of it, and it. I loved it then, and I loved it to this day. I've never fallen out of love with Minnesota.
And uh, and so it was 1983 when you move out there, and at that time, from sort of what I was researching and stuff, Prince basically his studio was just in his house. So is that kind of where you set up shop and got started on working
Yeah,
there?
we had two bases of operation in Minneapolis. His home, and it was just a split level suburban home on a cul-de-sac in Chanhassen, Minnesota, belonged to a family that had 3 or 4 kids, I think. It was like a 4 bedroom, 5 bedroom home. So he had a one room studio. It was just essentially just a bedroom, a kid sized bedroom across the hall from his master bedroom. That was a studio where he did a lot of the Purple Rain album. He had started it before I
Mm.
arrived. And then our second base of operation was the warehouse where we rehearsed. It was down the road a little ways, and that's where all his gear was. It was just an industrial manufacturing warehouse. There's nothing fancy about it at all. It wasn't a permanent base of operation. He would eventually build Paisley Park Studios. So we were working and making this record, Purple Rain, under conditions that were very ad hoc, things that were just put
Hmm.
together in order to allow signal to flow. Prince's competition at that time was Michael Jackson, who happened to be working at Westlake Studios out in Los Angeles and working with Quincy Jones and Bruce Swedien and the best studios, the best producer, the best engineer in the world. and Prince was competing with Michael, working at a home studio in a warehouse with no producer and an engineer who was his technician. Right on, Prince. Way to
Yeah.
go. Way to go.
Yeah. It's it is kind of crazy to think, cuz I mean Purple Rain's such a great sounding album, and to think it was done in those conditions, it's kind of crazy. And it's also funny you bring up Michael, cuz the last episode of the podcast that I did was with David Paich from Toto, who of course worked on Thriller quite a lot. So that's cool to bring up that record, and now I'm talking to someone who was on the competition
Yeah,
album, I
yeah.
guess.
The very
Yeah.
fact of that is just one of the many reasons why I admire Prince so greatly. He had a lot of moxie, and he knew that his
Mhm.
musical ideas could compensate for the lack of technical prowess that we had going on that record. Now,
Mhm.
much of, or some of Purple Rain anyway, was done at Sunset Sound. Sunset Sound in Los Angeles is
Mhm.
one of the world's finest recording studios. So it's not like we were totally working at home or under impoverished circumstances. But wherever there was musical instruments and recording equipment, Prince could make music. He didn't worry about the
Yeah.
technical details being imperfect. Didn't slow.
Yeah. And I appreciate the fact that he did stay in Minnesota for most of his career, when he could have easily moved to LA and just been based out of there. I really appreciate the fact that he stayed in his home and where he came from, kind of like how Bruce Springsteen never left New Jersey
Um,
as well.
Prince was a shy person in a sense that he didn't make small talk. He was uncomfortable with that kind of with personal attention. Um, he was
Hmm.
very, very comfortable on stage, like a lot of performers are, but there was no way that he wanted to be part of the Hollywood celebrity crowd or the New York celebrity crowd for that matter. No way. It did not feel comfortable to him at all.
Hmm. Yeah. And now I understand that once you started working there, you didn't actually meet him for quite a while when you first got there. Is that right?
Yeah, it was quite a few days, maybe even a week. So if you can picture this, if you park your car in the driveway of his house at that time, you can either go up a little rise, walk up some stairs, cross the lawn, and go up to the front door, or go in through the garage, which is at a lower level. And then from the garage, you can enter into this bedroom recording studio. So that's what I was doing. I was working in that studio, repairing his console, tape machine, and gear. He needed a new console installed actually, so the old one had to come out, new one had to be put in. So he's up above me. Directly above me is where the kitchen meets the dining room, and his piano is right there. So I can hear him up above me taking meetings with band members and with members of Vanity Six, and I can hear them dancing and laughing and talking, and they're planning this movie. And
Hmm.
I still haven't actually met him because I'm coming in through the garage, and when I'm done at night, I'm leaving through the garage. Studio door is closed, so I'm not seeing his comings and goings in and out of his master bedroom right on the other side of that door. So anyway, after about a week's worth of work, I let his house manager know. Her name was Sandy. Sandy, I'm done. I'm done. What does he want me to do next? And she called Prince, and he came downstairs, and we had our very first conversation on the landing of the stairs. It was
Hmm.
memorable for me because he didn't even say hello or nice to meet you or anything. He didn't introduce himself. He just came, and he just right away started asking me questions. Have you done this? What's going on with that? What's happening here? And I answered those questions. And then he said, okay, come back tomorrow. Gave me a time. He turned around to go. And I don't know, something, some instinct told me, don't let it start like this. Don't let this be the way it starts. It just felt wrong. And
Hmm.
I had just moved 2,300 miles, leaving every human being I knew in order to move to this new place. And there's no way that I'm going to do this and he's not going to know my name. So he
Mhm.
turned around to leave, and I just stopped him. I just said, Prince. He turned back around and said, yes. And I just said, I'm Susan Rogers. And I stuck my hand out to shake hands with him. Just a moment of saying, remember, always, we're both human, and always will be equal on that level. From here on
Mhm.
out, it's an unequal relationship. He's the boss and I'm the employee. He can fire me at any time, but I can quit at any time. So that little moment ended up being important to me personally. I'm glad I did it.
Yeah. And uh, so when you brought or when you were brought in to be on Prince's team, it was really as a tech. But how did that sort of change into becoming sort of his engineer?
Yeah, it changed pretty quickly. I anticipated I was just going to be in a technical role, but he didn't see it that way. And I remember shortly after that first meeting, he asked me to set up a vocal mic and put up a tape. Okay. Putting up a tape, not a problem, but setting up a vocal mic, that's an engineer's job. Technicians don't do that. Of course, we know how to. That's not the problem. It would be like on a movie set having the person who repairs the camera suddenly get behind the camera and start framing the shot
Right.
for the cinematographer. You don't do it. Huge violation of protocol. So, yeah, he asked me, so I set up this mic, and I kept thinking at any moment now an engineer is going to come in and going to be mad at me for setting up this mic, but I'm going to have to explain, well, he's my boss and he asked me to do it. And then finally, no one was showing up, and I asked him, well, who's going to record it? And he said, you. And that's when I realized he either doesn't know or he doesn't care the distinction between a maintenance tech and an engineer. So either way, I'm going for it. And I sat in that chair and did the best I could until my skill set improved to where I actually could call myself an engineer.